The cold wind howled across the dead planet as Dr. Vexhai stepped out of the transport ship. Her breath formed white clouds in the thin air. The world of Kepler 442c had been frozen for thousands of years. Nothing lived here anymore. That was why the Zephyrian science team had come. Dead worlds often held the best secrets. Vexhai pulled her coat tighter around her blue-scaled body. She had 4 arms, which made working in the cold easier than it was for her human-like teammates. Her large black eyes scanned the dig site. Machines hummed as they melted through layers of ice and rock. They had been digging for 3 months now. "Doctor, you need to see this," called Professor Thinmore from across the site. His voice carried worry. Thinmore was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. His people were known for being calm, but today he seemed nervous. Vexhai walked over to where Thinmore stood. He pointed down into a deep hole the machines had carved. At the bottom, something metallic gleamed under the work lights. It was perfectly smooth and reflected no light at all. The metal seemed to drink in the light instead of bouncing it back. "What is it?" Vexhai asked. She had seen many strange things in her career as an archaeologist, but this was different. "We think it's a door," Thinmore said. "But our scanners can't read it. Every time we try to scan the metal, our machines shut down. It's like the door is fighting back." Vexhai climbed down into the hole using the metal ladder her team had installed. The door was huge, maybe 4 meters tall and 3 meters wide. The metal was dark gray, almost black. When she reached out to touch it, the metal felt warm despite the freezing air around them. "How deep was this buried?" she asked. 2 kilometers. "Down," came the reply from above. "This door has been here for a very long time, maybe 50,000 years or more." Vexhai studied the surface of the door. Most of it was smooth, but there were markings carved into the metal. The symbols made no sense. They were not like any language in the Galactic database. When she tried to take pictures of them with her scanner, the device sparked and went dead. "Thinmore, come down here," she called. "Bring the old paper notebook." The professor climbed down carefully. His long legs made it awkward, but he managed. He pulled out a simple paper notebook and started, drawing the symbols by hand. It was slow work, but it was the only way to record them. "These markings," Thinmore said as he drew. "I have seen something like them before." "Where?" Vexhai asked. "In the old warning archives. 12 different worlds have similar symbols. Always, on monuments that say stay away or danger here. But these symbols are clearer than the others." Vexhai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "What kind of warnings?" Thinmore finished drawing a set of parallel lines with geometric shapes around them. "Warnings about the Terrans, the humans, the species that vanished long. Ago." The name hung in the air like a curse. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans, but only from old stories. They had been a warlike species that appeared and disappeared quickly. Most people thought the stories were just myths, scary tales to tell children about monsters that lived in space. "That's impossible," Vexhai said. "Humans are just legends." "Maybe," Thinmore replied. "But these symbols match the old human warning signs exactly." They worked for 3 more weeks trying to open the door. Every tool they used either broke or stopped working when it touched the strange metal. Vexhai called for help from the best engineers in the Zephyrian Confederation. They brought bigger machines and smarter computers. Nothing worked. Then one day, Dr. Krisha made a discovery. Krisha was young for a Zephyrian, only 200 years old. Her scales were still bright, green instead of the dark blue of older Zephyrians. She was working on translating the symbols when she noticed something strange. "Dr. Vexhai," Krisha called excitedly. "I think these aren't just decorations. I think they're instructions." "Instructions for what?" Vexhai asked. "For opening the door. Look at this pattern here." Krisha pointed to a series of symbols near the bottom of the door. If I press them in this order— Wait! Vex-High shouted, but it was too late. Krisha pressed the symbols in sequence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door began to glow with a soft blue light. The glow spread from the symbols across the entire surface. The metal made a deep humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The door split down, the middle with a loud crack. The two halves slid apart smoothly, revealing darkness beyond. Air rushed out of the opening, carrying a strange smell. It smelled like machines and chemicals and something else. Something alive! Everyone back up, Vex-High ordered. Her team scrambled away from the opening. They had no idea what might come out, but nothing came out. The darkness beyond the door was complete. Even their brightest lights could not show what was inside the chamber. Get the atmospheric scanner, Vex-High said. I want to know if it's safe to breathe in there. The scanner showed the air inside was clean. It was even fresher than the air outside. Somehow, the sealed chamber had kept perfect air for thousands of years. Vex-High was the first to step inside. Her light revealed a room carved from the same strange metal as the door. The walls were covered with more symbols, but these were different. They seemed to tell a story in pictures. Images of spaceships and battles and stars exploding. In the center of the room stood a large crystal container. It was shaped like a coffin, but made of clear material that sparkled in the light. Inside the container, suspended in some kind of liquid, was a creature unlike anything in the galactic archives. It was roughly humanoid, but smaller than most intelligent species. It had pale skin and hair the color of earth. Its body was lean, but looked strong. Most shocking of all, it had only 2 arms and 2 legs. No tail, no extra limbs, no natural armor or weapons. Is it dead? Thinmore whispered. Vex-High moved closer to the crystal container. Small machines hummed quietly around it, keeping whatever was inside alive. Lights blinked on panels covered with more of the strange symbols. I don't think so, she said. I think it's sleeping. As she spoke, something changed. The lights on the machines blinked faster. The humming grew louder. The liquid in the container began to drain away. Everyone out! Vex-High shouted. Now! But before anyone could move, the creature's eyes opened. They were blue, like the sky on a living world. They looked around the chamber with confusion, then focused on Vex-High with an intelligence that made her 3 hearts skip beats. The creature in the crystal sat up slowly. It looked at each member of the team in turn. When it spoke, the words were in an unknown language, but somehow they all understood the meaning. How long? It asked. Its voice was rough from long sleep. 50,000 years, Vex-High managed to say. The creature nodded as if this was expected. It looked sad but not surprised. Then they're all gone, it said quietly. My people, my species, all dead. You're human, Thinmore said. It was not a question. I am, the creature replied. My name is Sarah Chen. I was a captain in the Terran Colonial Defense Force. It paused, studying their faces. I suppose you're wondering why I was sealed in here? Vex-High could only nod. Captain Chen smiled, but it was not a happy smile. I was a weapon, she said simply. The last weapon my people ever made, and if you woke me up, that means you need me. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of ancient machines. Outside, the cold wind continued to blow across the dead world. But inside the sealed room, something had awakened that would change the galaxy forever. Vex-High realized with growing dread that they had not found an archaeological treasure. They had found exactly what the old warnings had tried to prevent anyone from finding. They had found a human. Captain Sarah Chen sat on the edge of the medical table and tried to understand what the aliens were telling her. The Zephyrian doctor, Vex-High, spoke slowly and used simple words. But the news was still hard to believe. 50,000 years. Everyone she had ever known was dead. Earth was gone. The human race was extinct. Chen looked down at her hands. They looked the same as they had when she went into the crystal sleep. The preservation system had worked perfectly. Her body was exactly as it had been on the last day of the war, but everything else had changed. "Tell me about the galaxy now," she said. Dr. Vexhai pulled up a holographic display. It showed hundreds of star systems connected by trade routes, peaceful worlds where different species worked together. It looked like paradise compared to the war-torn galaxy Chen remembered. "After your species vanished, the remaining races formed the Galactic Council," Vexhai explained. "We have had peace for 40,000 years. No wars, no conflicts. We solve problems by talking and voting." Chen almost laughed. "No wars at all?" "None," said Professor Thinmore proudly. "We learned that violence only creates more violence. Diplomacy is always better." "Then why did you wake me up?" Chen asked. The aliens looked uncomfortable. Vexhai cleared her throat. "There is a problem. Something we cannot solve with talking." Another hologram appeared. This one showed the outer edge of the galaxy. Entire star systems were missing, leaving only empty space where billions of beings had once lived. "We call them the Devourers," Vexhai said. "They appeared 5 years ago at the galactic rim. They destroy everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire systems. Nothing is left behind." Chen studied the display. The pattern of destruction was methodical, like a machine, slowly eating its way through space. "How fast are they moving?" "They consume one system every few weeks," Thinmore replied. "They have already destroyed over 200 worlds, billions of lives lost." "What did you do to stop them?" "We tried to communicate," Vexhai said. "We sent diplomatic missions with offers of peace and trade. The Devourers destroyed every ship we sent. Then we built defensive fleets to protect our worlds. And they were destroyed in minutes. The Devourers have weapons we cannot understand, ships that seem to bend space itself. Our technology is useless against them." Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the Zephyrian capital city. Tall spires of crystal and metal reached toward the sky. Beautiful gardens connected the buildings. Everything was clean and peaceful and perfect. "How long before they reached the core worlds?" she asked. 3 months, Vexhai said quietly. "Maybe less." Chen turned back to face them. "And you think I can help you?" "The old human warnings speak of your species as great warriors," Professor Thinmore said. "The archives say humans understood war better than any other race. We hoped." "You hoped I would know how to kill them," Chen finished. The aliens nodded, looking ashamed. Chen was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the humans who had built the preservation chamber, her commanders who had sent her into the long sleep. They had known this day might come. "I need to see everything," she said finally. "All your intelligence reports, your military analyses, everything you know about these Devourers." For the next 3 days, Chen read constantly. The Galactic Council gave her access to their most secret files. She studied Devourer attack patterns, examined wreckage from destroyed fleets, and reviewed every communication attempt. The council members watched her work with fascination and growing fear. Chen would sometimes laugh at their reports. Other times, she would shake her head and mutter words in old human languages that the translators could not convert. "Your fleet formations are terrible," she told Admiral Kextar, the council's senior military officer. Kextar was a proud Vorthon with natural armor plating and 4 powerful arms. He had commanded fleets for 300 years. "Our formations follow all tactical principles," Kextar replied stiffly. "Maximum firepower concentration with minimal casualties." "That's your problem," Chen said. "You're trying to fight a war without accepting that people are going to die. War isn't about minimizing casualties. It's about making sure your enemy takes more damage than you do. Admiral Kextar's face showed confusion. But surely the goal is to preserve life? The goal is to win, Chen said firmly. If you don't win, everyone dies anyway. You've been thinking like diplomats, not soldiers. She pulled up a tactical display showing the Devourer's latest attack. The Council fleet had arranged itself in a perfect defensive sphere around the planet they were protecting. The formation looked beautiful and symmetrical. Look at this, Chen said, pointing to the display. You gave them exactly what they wanted, a predictable target that couldn't maneuver. They cut through your formation like it wasn't even there. What should we have done? Dr. Vexhai asked. Run away, Chen said simply. The room went silent. Several council members looked shocked. Run away? Admiral Kextar repeated. Abandon the planet we were protecting? Yes. Let them take it. Then hit them when they're not expecting it. Chen changed the display to show a different scenario. You evacuate the civilians first. Then you let the Devourers land and start their consumption process. While they're busy stripping the planet, you attack their support ships. Cut off their supply lines. Force them to fight on your terms instead of theirs. But the planet would be destroyed, Professor Thinmore protested. The planet got destroyed anyway, Chen pointed out. But your way, you also lost an entire fleet. My way, you save the fleet and make the enemy pay a price. Over the following days, Chen taught them concepts that horrified their peaceful minds. Strategic retreats, acceptable losses, the difference between tactics and strategy. How to make an enemy think you were weak when you were actually setting a trap. War is not about honor, she explained to the assembled council leaders. It's not about being fair or following rules. It's about survival. The Devourers understand this. They don't negotiate because they don't need to. They're stronger than you, so they just take what they want. But there must be a peaceful solution, insisted Counselor Yithral, a mantis-like being whose species had been pacifists for millennia. Perhaps if we offered them what they want. What they want is everything, Chen said. They want your worlds, your resources, your people. You can't negotiate with extinction. She showed them recordings of human military history, battles where smaller forces defeated larger ones through superior tactics, wars where the outcome was decided not by who had better weapons, but by who was willing to use them more effectively. Your species evolved to cooperate, Chen explained. You build consensus and avoid conflict. Those are good traits for running a peaceful galaxy, but they're terrible traits for fighting a war. What do you recommend? Asked Admiral Kextar. Despite his initial resistance, he was beginning to understand. Chen smiled for the first time since waking up. It was not a nice smile. We're going to teach you how to think like predators, she said. The Devourers have been hunting prey for so long, they've forgotten what it's like to be hunted. She outlined her plan. It would require the Council to do things that went against everything they believed in. They would have to sacrifice territory to gain advantage. They would have to accept that some people would die so that others could live. They would have to become something they had never been before. They would have to become warriors. The vote was close. Many council members wanted to continue trying diplomatic solutions. Others argued for evacuation to distant galaxies. But in the end, fear won over hope. By a margin of just 3 votes, the Galactic Council agreed to implement Captain Chen's strategy. As the meeting ended and the aliens filed out to begin preparations, Chen stood alone in the chamber. She thought about the preservation room where she had slept for 50,000 years. The humans who built it had known this moment would come. They had known that someday the galaxy would need to remember how to fight. Chen looked out at the peaceful city one more time. Soon it would be converted to weapons production. The beautiful gardens would be replaced with military training grounds. The crystal spires would manufacture warships instead of art. It was necessary. but that didn't make it less sad. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known. Sometimes, to preserve peace, you had to be very good at war. Captain Chen stood in the center of the war room as alarms blared throughout the Zephyrian capital. The latest report was bad. The Devourers had just consumed the Keltor system, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. They were moving faster than anyone had predicted. "We need to evacuate the Outer Rim colonies immediately," Chen announced to the gathered council leaders. "Every civilian, every piece of useful equipment, strip those worlds bare and fall back to the Middle Ring." Counselor Yithral's antenna twitched with agitation. "But Captain, we have 16 billion people in the Outer Rim. The evacuation ships can't possibly move them all in time." "Then move the ones you can and destroy what you can't take," Chen replied without emotion. "Don't leave anything useful for the Devourers." The silence in the room was thick. Admiral Kextar was the first to speak. "You're talking about abandoning entire worlds, billions of beings." "I'm talking about strategy," Chen said firmly. She activated the tactical display, showing the galaxy with Devourer positions marked in red. "Look at their pattern. They consume everything on a planet before moving to the next system. That takes time. If we evacuate the population and destroy the infrastructure, we force them to waste resources on empty worlds." "But our people have lived on those worlds for thousands of years," Dr. Vexhai protested. "Their entire cultures, their histories, will be completely destroyed if the Devourers get there first," Chen interrupted. "This way, at least the people survive. Culture can be rebuilt. Dead people cannot." Professor Thinmore studied the display carefully. His logical mind was beginning to see Chen's reasoning. How much time would this delay them? "Maybe 2 months if we do it right," Chen answered. 2 months to prepare better defenses and train your people to fight." The debate went on for hours. Council members argued about the ethics of abandoning worlds, the logistics of mass evacuation, and the psychological impact on their populations. Chen listened with growing impatience. Finally, she slammed her hand on the table. The sharp sound silenced the room. "While you're debating, people are dying," she said coldly. "The Devourers don't care about your committees or your votes. They're going to keep coming whether you're ready or not." She pointed to Admiral Kextar. "How many ships did you lose in the last engagement?" 43 vessels, the Admiral answered reluctantly. "Nearly 8,000 crew members." "And how much damage did you do to them?" "Our sensors detected minimal damage to their formation." Chen nodded. "So you lost everything and accomplished nothing. That's not war, that's suicide with extra steps." She walked to the display and began highlighting systems. "Here's what's going to happen. We evacuate these 12 systems immediately. We take everything valuable and destroy the rest. When the Devourers arrive, they'll find nothing but empty worlds and rubble." "What about our defensive fleets?" Admiral Kextar asked. "We pull them back too. Stop trying to fight battles you can't win. Instead, we'll hit their supply lines. Fast attacks on their support ships, then retreat before they can respond." Counselor Yithral's voice was full of despair. "You're asking us to abandon everything we've built." "I'm asking you to survive," Chen replied. "Your civilization has been peaceful for so long, you've forgotten what it costs to stay alive in a hostile universe." Over the next week, Chen worked 18 hours a day restructuring the Council's entire military doctrine. She threw out their defensive strategies and replaced them with human concepts that had no equivalent in their languages. "What is acceptable losses?" asked Commander Javal during a strategy briefing. Javal was a young Andromedian with blue skin and silver hair. She commanded one of the Council's few remaining battle groups. "It means some of your people are going to die," Chen explained. "The question is whether their deaths accomplish something useful. If you sacrifice 10 ships to destroy one enemy vessel, that's unacceptable. If you sacrifice 10 ships to save 1 million civilians, that might be acceptable." The concept horrified the assembled officers. In their culture, every life was precious. The idea of deliberately putting people in danger went against their deepest beliefs. "How do you decide who lives and who dies?" Commander Javal asked. "You don't," Chen said. "That's what makes it terrible. You make the best tactical decision you can and hope it works out. If it doesn't, you learn from the mistake and do better next time." She taught them about combined arms tactics, where different types of ships worked together instead of operating independently. She showed them how to use their enemy's size against them by fighting in asteroid fields and nebulae where the Devourer's massive ships couldn't maneuver effectively. Most importantly, she taught them to think like hunters instead of prey. "HFY Devourers expect you to meet them head-on," she explained during a simulation exercise. "They're used to overwhelming firepower winning every engagement, but what if you don't fight the battle they want to fight?" The simulation showed a Devourer fleet approaching a defended system. Instead of meeting them at the system's edge, Chen's strategy called for the defenders to hide among the asteroids and let the enemy pass by. Then, while the Devourers were attacking the inner planets, the defenders would strike at their rear. "Guard! But they'll destroy the planets," Admiral Kextar objected. "The planets are already evacuated," Chen reminded him. "Let them waste time and energy destroying empty rocks while you hit them where it hurts." The simulation ran. The Devourer fleet spent 3 days methodically destroying uninhabited worlds while the Council forces picked off their support ships, one by one. By the time the Devourers realized what was happening, they had lost 30% of their fleet and gained nothing of value. "It worked," Commander Javal said with amazement. "We actually hurt them." "That was just a simulation," Chen warned. "The real thing will be harder, but now you understand the principle. Don't fight their war. Make them fight yours." Meanwhile, the evacuation of the Outer Rim continued. Massive transport fleets carried refugees to safer systems, while demolition teams destroyed anything that might be useful to the enemy. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Orbital stations were blown apart. Even the space lanes were seeded with mines and debris to slow Devourer movements. The images of destruction were broadcast across the galaxy. Many council members wept as they watched 1,000-year-old settlements disappear in flashes of light. But Chen remained unmoved. "This is what war looks like," she told them. "It's ugly and wasteful and unfair, but it's better than extinction." Some alien cultures simply couldn't adapt to the new way of thinking. The crystalline collective, beings made of living mineral, were physically incapable of aggressive action. Chen assigned them to logistics and support roles where their natural efficiency could help without requiring them to fight. Other species took to the training with disturbing enthusiasm. The Vorthons, who had been peaceful traders for millennia, discovered they had an unexpected talent for ambush tactics. Their natural armor and strength made them excellent boarding troops for captured enemy vessels. "You're changing us," Dr. Vexahai observed during one of their late-night planning sessions. "We're not the same species we were a month ago." Chen looked up from the tactical report she was reviewing. "War changes everyone who fights it. The question is whether you change enough to survive." "And after the war, do we ever change back?" "Some do," Chen said quietly. "Others don't. That's another cost you have to consider." As the weeks passed, reports came in from the evacuated systems. The Devourers had arrived at 3 of the abandoned worlds. Just as Chen predicted, they spent days consuming empty planets while Council strike forces harassed their flanks. The enemy was finally taking real casualties, but the Devourers were learning too. Their next attack came faster and with better coordination. They had adapted to the new tactics quicker than Chen had hoped. "They're not stupid," she admitted to Admiral Kextar after reviewing the latest battle reports. "They've figured out what we're doing. The next phase is going to be harder." "What do you recommend?" Chen smiled her predator's smile again. We escalate. If they want to play rough, we'll show them what humans considered rough 50,000 years ago. She pulled up new tactical displays showing weapons and strategies that made the assembled officers go pale. Things that even the humans had considered too dangerous to use except in the most desperate circumstances. "Are you sure about this?" Admiral Kextar asked. "No," Chen admitted, "but I'm sure about what happens if we don't try." The war was about to enter a new phase, and the galaxy was about to learn why humans had once been the most feared species in known space. The first sign that something had changed came when the Devourer scout ships entered the Helix Nebula. They expected to find the usual panicked evacuation and desperate defense. Instead, they found nothing. Captain Chen watched the enemy fleet from the bridge of the Council flagship, Unity's Dream. The ship had been rebuilt according to human specifications, with armor plating and weapon systems that would have seemed barbaric to the original designers. Around her, alien officers worked at stations they were still learning to use. "Enemy fleet is maintaining standard approach vector," reported Commander Javal. The young Andromedian had adapted to human tactics faster than most. Her blue skin had taken on a harder edge during the weeks of training. 64 ships in formation, no change in pattern. "Perfect," Chen said. "They're doing exactly what we want them to do." The Helix Nebula was one of the galaxy's most beautiful sights. Clouds of colored gas stretched across light years, lit from within by young stars. Tourist ships had once brought millions of visitors to see its glory. Now it was a trap. Chen had spent 3 weeks preparing this battle. Every detail had been planned with mathematical precision. The Devourers thought they were attacking another helpless system. They had no idea they were flying into the galaxy's first human-designed ambush in 50,000 years. "Admiral Kextar, are your mining platforms ready?" Chen asked through the communication system. "All charges are armed and synchronized," came the reply from the Vorthon commander. "We can trigger the overload sequence on your signal." The plan was simple but brutal. The Devourers always sent their main fleet to consume the outer mining platforms first. They would dock their massive ships to the stations and begin stripping them for resources. But these mining platforms had been modified. Their fusion reactors were now massive bombs waiting to explode. "Enemy is beginning docking procedures with Platform 7, reported the sensor officer. "Platform 8 and 9 are also being approached." Chen waited. Timing was everything. Too early, and the Devourers would escape with minimal damage. Too late, and they might detect the trap. "Platform 7 reports enemy boarding parties inside the station," Javal announced. "Platform 8 is being penetrated by their extraction. Beams," Chen counted silently. The Devourers needed to commit more ships to the operation. More importantly, they needed to be close enough that the explosion would catch them all. "Platform 9 is now fully engaged," the sensor officer called out. 14 enemy vessels are attached to the mining platforms. "Signal Admiral Kextar," Chen ordered. "Execute the overload sequence. All platforms, all charges, simultaneous detonation." The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The mining platform's fusion reactors overloaded in perfect sequence, creating a cascade of energy that channeled through the nebula's gas clouds. The colored clouds became a river of fire that consumed everything in its path. 14 Devourer. Ships vanished instantly. The explosion was so bright that the bridge lights automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes. When the glare faded, nearly a quarter of the enemy fleet was simply gone. "Direct hit confirmed," Javal reported with excitement. "Enemy formation is breaking apart. They're trying to retreat." "Don't let them," Chen said calmly. "Signal the strike groups. Begin Phase 2. Hidden throughout the nebula, Council strike forces dropped their stealth fields and attacked. Small, fast ships built for hit-and-run tactics swarmed the confused Devourer fleet. They targeted engines and weapon systems, crippling ships instead of trying to destroy them outright. The Devourers tried to form a defensive position, but Chen had anticipated this too. as soon as they began to group together. The hidden weapons. Platforms she had scattered through the nebula opened fire. Massive kinetic projectiles, accelerated to near light speed, punched through even the Devourer's advanced armor. "Enemy flagship is taking heavy damage," reported Commander Javal. "Their formation is completely broken. Some ships are trying to jump to hyperspace." "Activate the interdiction field," Chen ordered. Space around the nebula suddenly became impossible to navigate. The jump inhibitors Chen had positioned blocked all hyperspace exits. The surviving Devourer ships were trapped with nowhere to run. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it was over, the Devourers had lost 43 ships out of their original 64. More importantly, they had lost something else: their aura of invincibility. But Chen wasn't finished. "Signal all strike groups," she announced. "Begin pursuit of retreating vessels. I want to know where they're going." The surviving Devourer ships fled toward the Galactic Rim, damaged and desperate. Chen's forces followed at a distance, tracking their route and noting their bases. For the first time since the war began, the Council had intelligence about Devourer operations. "Captain," Admiral Kextar called from his ship, "the enemy is regrouping at a staging area in the Void sector. Our scouts count at least 200 ships." Chen studied the tactical display. The Void sector was empty space between spiral arms of the galaxy. It was the perfect place for the Devourers to build a base without being detected. Until now. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" she asked. 87 vessels in various stages of repair," Commander Javal reported. "But, Captain, they outnumber us more than 2 to 1. "Numbers don't matter if you use them right," Chen replied. "Besides, we're not going to fight them directly." She activated a new tactical display. This one showed the Devourer base in detail, with supply routes and defensive positions marked. Chen had been studying their patterns for weeks, learning how they operated. "The Devourers think like a swarm," she explained to her officers. "They rely on overwhelming force and superior technology, but swarms have weaknesses. Cut off their supply lines, and they become vulnerable." Chen's next attack was even more devastating than the first. Instead of hitting the Devourer fleet directly, she targeted their support infrastructure. Supply convoys were ambushed and destroyed. Communication relays were sabotaged. Resource extraction operations were disrupted by coordinated strikes. "They're starving," reported Dr. Vexhai after analyzing captured Devourer technology. "Their ships require massive amounts of exotic matter to function. Without steady supplies, they can't maintain their weapons or shields." The psychological effect was even more important than the physical damage. The Devourers had never faced an enemy that could predict their movements and counter their strategies. They began making mistakes, overreacting to feints and falling for obvious traps. "Fear," Chen explained to the council leaders during a strategy meeting. "They're afraid of us now." "That's good. Afraid enemies make poor decisions." She was right. The Devourer's next major attack was poorly coordinated and easily defeated. They lost another 30 ships trying to retake a system that the Council had already evacuated. Worse, they wasted precious resources on a meaningless objective. But the war was far from over. Intelligence reports showed more Devourer fleets arriving from deep space. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. They were bringing their full strength to bear against this unexpected resistance. "How many ships are coming?" asked Admiral Kextar during the daily briefing. "Our best estimate is over 3,000 vessels," Chen replied. "Maybe more. They're pulling forces from across the galaxy to deal with us." The number sent shock waves through the assembled officers. Even with their recent victories, the Council fleet numbered barely 200 ships. The odds were overwhelming. "Perhaps we should consider negotiation," suggested Councillor Yithral. "Surely they would be willing to discuss terms now that we've proven we can hurt them." Chen shook her head. "You still don't understand what you're fighting. The Devourers don't negotiate because they don't need to. They're bringing their full force here to end this war quickly." "Then what do we do?" Commander Javal asked. Chen smiled her dangerous smile one more time. We do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We cheat. She activated a new display showing the galactic center. Ancient stars and dangerous phenomena filled the screen. It was a region most species avoided, too dangerous for normal space travel. The final battle won't be fought here, Chen announced. It will be fought there, in the most dangerous place in the galaxy. And by the time it's over, everyone will know why the universe was safer when humans were extinct. The officers stared at the display with growing understanding and terror. Chen's plan wasn't just about winning the war, it was about ending it, so completely that nothing like the Devourers would ever threaten the galaxy again. The counterattack had been successful, but the real war was about to begin. The final battle began in the void between galaxies, where ancient machines drifted in the endless dark. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the combined Council fleet as 3,000 Devourer ships approached their position. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and she intended it to be the last. All ships report ready for combat, announced Commander Javal. Her voice was steady, but Chen could see the fear in her blue eyes. They were outnumbered 15-1. By any reasonable calculation, they should surrender. But Chen had stopped thinking reasonably a long time ago. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin the retreat to Point Omega. The Council ships turned and fled toward the galactic center. Behind them, the Devourer fleet followed like a hunting pack. Their massive vessels moved with terrifying grace, closing the distance steadily. They had learned to be cautious, but they still believed numbers would win the day. They were wrong. Point Omega was a region no sane pilot would enter voluntarily. Ancient neutron stars spun at impossible speeds, creating gravity wells that could tear apart any ship that came too close. Streams of exotic radiation made navigation nearly impossible. Even the space itself was unstable, folded and twisted by forces that predated most civilizations. Are you certain about this? Admiral Kextar asked through the communication channel. His voice carried across space from his flagship, where Vorthon engineers worked frantically to keep their shields functioning in the hostile environment. Trust me, Chen replied. She had been planning this moment for months, studying ancient star charts and gravitational maps that most species had forgotten existed. The Devourers have superior technology, but they don't understand this region like we do. The first phase of the trap was simple. Chen's fleet spread out among the neutron stars, using their gravity wells as shields against Devourer weapons. The enemy ships tried to follow, but their massive size worked against them. What looked like a retreat was actually Chen drawing them into an environment where their advantages became weaknesses. Enemy formation is breaking apart, reported the sensor officer. They're having trouble maintaining cohesion in the gravity fields. Good, Chen said. Signal Alpha Group. Begin harassment attacks. Small Council ships darted between the neutron stars like fish swimming through coral reefs. They fired quick bursts at isolated Devourer vessels, then disappeared behind gravitational barriers before return fire could reach them. It was a deadly game of hide-and-seek played on a cosmic scale. The Devourers tried to adapt. They sent smaller ships to pursue the Council forces through the maze of stellar obstacles. But Chen had anticipated this too. Detonate the gravity mines, she ordered. Weeks earlier, Chen had positioned modified mining charges throughout the neutron star cluster. When they exploded, they didn't create simple blasts. Instead, they destabilized the delicate gravitational balance that kept the region stable. Space itself began to tear apart. Gravity waves rippled through the void, catching dozens of Devourer ships in invisible currents that crushed them like tin cans. Neutron stars shifted in their orbits, creating new hazards and eliminating old safe passages. The carefully calculated paths the Devourers had been following suddenly became death traps. Direct hit on enemy command ship, Commander Javal reported with excitement. Massive structural damage detected. Chen watched as the Devourer flagship, a vessel larger than most space stations, was caught between two competing gravity fields. The ship stretched like taffy before finally breaking apart. Its destruction sent debris cascading through the stellar graveyard, taking out smaller vessels in chain reactions of destruction. But the battle was far from over. The surviving Devourers regrouped and began a more cautious advance. They had lost hundreds of ships, but they still outnumbered the Council fleet. Their technology was still superior. They adapted quickly to the new environment. "They're learning our tricks," Admiral Kextar observed. "The gravity traps aren't as effective anymore." "Then it's time for Phase 2, Chen announced. She activated a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets. When she spoke, her words were translated into dozens of languages and broadcast across the entire battlefield. "Attention, Devourer forces," she said calmly. "You have 30 seconds to surrender before I demonstrate why the galaxy was safer when humans were extinct." The response was immediate. Devourer ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled space, trying to overwhelm the Council positions through sheer volume of fire. Chen smiled and pressed a single button. The neutron star at the center of the cluster had been more than just a gravitational anchor for her tactics. For weeks, Chen's engineers had been secretly modifying its magnetic field, using technology salvaged from ancient human archives. Technology that the galaxy had forgotten existed. The star's rotation suddenly accelerated. Its magnetic field collapsed and reformed in a new configuration. What had been a stable neutron star became something far more dangerous, an artificial magnetar. The magnetic pulse that erupted from the star was powerful enough to strip electrons from atoms at a distance of several light years. Every piece of electronic equipment in the Devourer fleet simply stopped working. Their shields failed. Their weapons went silent. Their engines died. In the span of 3 seconds, the most advanced fleet in galactic history became a collection of drifting metal hulks. "All ships," Chen announced to her own fleet. "The enemy is helpless. Begin the final phase." The Council. Ships had been hardened against electromagnetic pulses using techniques Chen remembered from the human-AI war. Their systems flickered but remained functional. They moved through the disabled Devourer fleet like sharks among wounded fish. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. The slaughter lasted 6 hours. Chen's forces methodically destroyed every Devourer ship, ensuring that none would escape to carry word of what had happened. She showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. When alien officers questioned the brutality, her answer was always the same. "This is what total war looks like. The Devourers would have done the same to you." When it was over, the void between galaxies was filled with expanding clouds of debris. 3,000 Devourer ships had been reduced to cosmic dust. Not a single enemy vessel survived, but Chen wasn't finished. "Set course for the Devourer home systems," she ordered. "We're going to end this permanently." "Captain," Dr. Vexhai protested through the communication system, "surely we've won. They have no more fleets to send against us." "They still have their production facilities," Chen replied coldly. "Their breeding worlds, their technology. As long as any Devourers exist, they're a threat to the galaxy." What followed was not war, but extermination. Chen's fleet tracked down every Devourer base, every outpost, every hidden colony. They destroyed not just ships and weapons, but the entire infrastructure that had supported the Devourer civilization. The work took months. Chen pursued her enemy across 3 galaxies, following fleeing survivors to their most distant refuges. She showed the same methodical thoroughness that the Devourers had once used against their own victims. When it was over, the Devourer species was extinct. Not defeated, not scattered, but completely eliminated from the universe. Chen had solved the problem permanently. The Council fleet returned to galactic civilization as heroes. but the celebration felt hollow. The galaxy had been saved, but at a cost that few truly understood. The peaceful species that had formed the Council had learned to think like killers. They had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. Chen stood alone on the observation deck of her flagship as they approached the Zephyrian capital. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the crystal spires and beautiful gardens that had once represented everything good about galactic civilization. Was it worth it? Dr. Vexhai asked, joining her at the window. Chen considered the question. Your species will survive. Your children will grow up in a galaxy without devourers. That's what matters. But we're not the same people we were before, Vexhai said quietly. We've learned things we can never unlearn, done things we can never undo. That's the price of survival, Chen replied. The galaxy will go back to being peaceful. You'll rebuild your diplomatic institutions and your cooperative governments, but you'll remember what it costs to preserve them. The ship entered orbit around the Zephyrian homeworld. Below, crowds gathered to welcome the returning heroes. They would celebrate for weeks, but eventually they would return to their normal lives. The war would become history, then legend, then myth. But somewhere in their collective memory, the galaxy would remember the lesson Captain Sarah Chen had taught them. Peace was precious because it was fragile. Civilization existed only because people were willing to fight for it when necessary. And if another threat ever emerged from the dark spaces between stars, the galaxy would know how to respond. Chen watched the celebration beginning on the planet below. She thought about the humans who had built her preservation chamber 50,000 years ago. They had known this day would come. They had prepared their final gift to the galaxy, the knowledge of how to win when winning seemed impossible. Shakida, weapon in the sealed chamber, had been deployed exactly as intended. The galaxy would never be the same, but it would survive. And sometimes, that was enough.